Do we have places? Okay. Do you need me to page them? Okay, thank you. All right, and checking in with the conductor. You all set? Have a good show, Maestra. Any places? All right. Let's do this. Have a good show, everyone. Stand by house to half and house out. House to half. Go. Lights 2 and house out. Go.
It's Friday. It's 5 p.m. This is a brand new laptop. We're figuring this out. This laptop has everything. It has bells. It has whistles. It has a camera that, for the first time in 4 years, is above the screen instead of below the screen. So you might see me this entire episode staring into where I am used to the camera being. So I apologize to everyone who for 4 years has been watching my nose hairs during Zoom calls, because I have learned that a camera down here is not necessarily the best place for it to be. I'm so happy to have this new laptop, except that it didn't ship with the one thing that they swore it would, which is a USB-A to USB-C adapter. So I believe this show is brought to you today by my neighbor Nissa, who I just ran down the stairs in my stocking feet to grab an adapter so I could plug the microphone in, so I could be here today with our amazing guests. Hi, my name is Ryan McCurdy. I'm the Executive Artistic Director of Savannah Rep, and you, of course, are watching On Stage Off. Now, you may have noticed that the shirt is the same, but I'm wearing a hat today. I figured there's no time like episode 15 to add a hat to the ensemble. Also, because in the midst of realizing I didn't have the adapter I needed, I forgot to do my hair. So we're very honest here at On Stage Off. We also have 2 guests per episode instead of 3, which you may have gotten used to in the first 14 episodes. I had said this show would never go longer than an hour, and when I had 3 guests, it would often go longer than an hour. So let's see if with 2 guests, I can keep things exactly as scheduled as I wanted them to be. Our first guest is an actor, a musician, a writer, a really cool person, and I am going to waste no more time bringing them to the show. Please welcome to On Stage Off, Kyra Sims, everyone. Hi.
Hi, happy to be here.
I'm so glad that you're here for the first technologically advanced version of On Stage Off.
Oh my goodness, congratulations.
Thank you.
I recently got a new laptop too, and yeah, it really is a game changer, especially during these times.
It was one of those things where I was in no way, I don't think any of us really were, I was in no way set up for this era. I didn't have a backdrop. I had no lights. I had a laptop where you could see my nose hairs. So I will ask you, I have since started to expand, and this laptop is sort of, I hope, the last expansion of my technology. Where were you? Where were you technologically when this all happened, and how have you had to change your game throughout, since it just seems to go on and on and on and on?
Yeah, my old laptop I had had since 2012, and it chugged along for a few months there. I was able to do some Zoom performances on it, and it was fine. And then I had an interview for like a more like high profile Zoom performance thing. And the day before the interview, my computer just wouldn't do anything. And so I said, oh my God, I can't
Right.
I can't do this interview on this laptop. So actually it was a very like last minute, went to the Apple store and like set it up in like the 3 hours before the interview. And I'm so glad I did. It was definitely the right decision. All my technological stuff is much better. My audio setup was pretty good already because I already had some good microphones. And so for my French horn remote recording stuff, that's been fine the whole time. But yeah, the video stuff definitely needed an improvement, and the just general laptop working situation needed improvement.
Right. And I feel like it's been at odds for me, and I suspect it might be the same for you, that this has fought my natural instincts to keep using a piece of technology until it has passed its last legs. Like I'm a Velveteen Rabbit sort of technology owner, where I use it until it falls apart in my hands. So like getting a new laptop when my old laptop still worked is something I had a big like internal fight about. But ultimately, I'm glad that I did, because I'm realizing that in this sort of second era, that it's not, even when this is over, we're still going to need this in a different way than we ever did before, because I think people have gotten used to receiving content that was made in our homes,
Yes.
even when we go back on stages. So I want to tell people about you, but it's better if you tell them about you, because I'm going to miss things and I want to make sure I get your story correct. So sort of bring us to your history, both joining the Neo-Futurists. I also want to talk a little bit about your parallel career tracks, because I share parallel career tracks in being a musician and an actor, and I think people are constantly shocked when they find out that I'm one and they didn't realize I was the other. So what's your personal journey? How did you come to the place that you are now as a performer, as a musician and an actor?
Oh gosh, I mean, I guess like the biggest theme of all of that is that I don't know how to say no to things. I like saying yes to new experiences, new opportunities. I like collaborating with new people, and yeah, and trying new things. I was both a theater kid and a band kid in high school, so it started young. Like I did 2 of the spring musicals and a play when I was in high school, and I was playing French horn all throughout. Not really taking it that seriously, but then as I got older, French horn started to become more important to me, and then I decided to major in music in college. Actually, originally I was going to do music therapy, because I really like working with students on the autism spectrum and students with multiple disabilities, because I did some of that in high school. But a little bit into the program, I realized that French horn doesn't really jive with that. You mostly are doing guitar or handheld instruments or singing. And so I would have had to put French horn in the back seat, at least for a while. And I realized at that point in my playing, I didn't want to do that. I had much more improving to do. I was not a very good French horn player when I started college, but I wanted to be.
Which I think is interesting, because I feel like a lot of people get to that point where they are deciding whether to keep an instrument in their life or not. And because they are not at the place they wanted to be, that is the reason that they put it down. So it seems like you had the opposite response. You said, I'm not done with this instrument, and you kept going.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, part of it was I was really bad at guitar. And that was one of the classes I was having to take for music therapy. I was super bad. And also my French horn professor was encouraging me down the performance path as well. So kind of like a combination of those 2 things. I decided, to switch my major to performance. And then I moved to New York in 2009, started my master's at Montclair State, and was interning, because I was also kind of going an administrative path too. There was like this third little like cute little branch.
A lot of colleges have that cute little branch. Yes.
Little like admin branch.
Right.
So I was interning at Jazz and Lincoln Center and starting my master's in Montclair. So I was living in New York City and commuting out to New Jersey for classes and performances. And then after the first year, I transferred to Manhattan School of Music and finished my master's degree there. And so I've been out of school since 2012, freelancing. And during that time of undergrad and grad, I was mostly focused on music. I did the Vagina Monologues a couple of times in undergrad, but otherwise wasn't doing much theater. Then when I was finished with both of my degrees, I started to sort of creep back into theater. I started taking improv at Upright Citizens Brigade, RIP New York branch.
Dearly departed.
And yeah, sort of kind of like fell into the theater scene that way. And really the way I got connected with the Neo-Futurists was completely sort of, I guess, serendipity sort of. Because I had heard about the Neo-Futurists from an episode of This American Life. that they did.
As did I. Okay,
Yeah.
that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and
That was
so
my first time.
I knew about it, but that was really it. I didn't really have any connections to it in the city. But then I really got into the podcast Welcome to Night Vale, and that podcast is basically all neo-futurist or neo-futurist adjacent people. So once I got into that, I ended up meeting one of the actors from that podcast at Joe's Pub at the Public Theater, because we had both come to see some other Welcome to Night Vale connected people performing that night. And
Awesome.
so I met him, and he was neo-futurist, Dylan Marin. He's incredible. And he ended up bringing me on to do sound design for a full-length show he was doing with a neo-futurist called The Human Symphony. That was my first time really doing any like serious like composing or sound design or anything. I was really learning as I went. I remember the load-in day at the New Ohio, just sort of crawling around, kind of like I learned what like a speak-on cable was.
Wait, can I ask a sort of an insert question there?
Sure.
What was the conversation, as it was something that you had never done before? What was the train of thought that led to you doing that job at that time?
Well, so it was sort of there were a few little steps that I skipped over. So originally, so the Human Symphony was a show where 6 audience members basically performed the whole thing, and they had an audio guide, like 6 different audio guides that Dylan created, that they would go around and like pick up props and stand in certain spots on the stage while a main track was playing of stories. So they were basically like embodying the visual aspects of these stories. And at the beginning stages of that project, Dylan wanted the audience members to also be able to play instruments. And he knew I was a musician and done some teaching artist stuff. And so we met up a couple of times and I gave him advice about like, oh, you could do this. You could set up like these really simple things that they could do. But as the show progressed, he decided that he didn't want them to do the music anymore. So he said, well, do you want me to just come on and do the music and the sound design? I said, sure. And so what it ended up being was I created these music cues that were separate from the main track of storytelling. But one of the audience members, it was their job to sit at a table with a laptop that was wired separately from the main speakers, and they would play the music cues on that laptop. And they also had an audio guide playing that said, okay, now play the next sound cue, play the next sound cue.
Which I love. I think that's so.
It was
spoiler alert. I saw it, and I did. It is a show that I love. I'm glad that you explained it for folks that are watching that may not have seen it, because I think obviously it was not the bread and butter of the neo-futurist that a lot of people know. The Too Much Light, which became Infinite Wrench. Mm-hmm. If I'm tracking that's the correct evolution, right?
That's correct. Yes.
If people think of that as sort of the baseline of what the futurists do, there's so many pathways. And that show was such a beautiful sort of exploration of what has sort of become our reality, which is needing our audience to have at least as much of a sophisticated technical understanding of what we're doing as we do. I mean, I'm finding these Zoom calls that people are selling as a piece of dynamic theater. A lot of them require you to sign on and understand how to listen and see, and some of them you're supposed to wear a costume or have your own props, and it has made me think at times that this entire thing is just a stunt by the neo-futurists, although I suspect that it is not. So so for those that are watching that may not know it, could you explain Infinite Wrench previously, Baby? Could you explain what that looks like? Because I think a lot of people may not know, and I think it is spectacularly fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. So the neo-futurists started in Chicago in 1988, so it's over 30 years old at this point. The original show was called Too Much Light Makes the Baby Go Blind. In that show, we attempt to perform 30 plays in 60 minutes. These are all plays that the cast and the ensemble we write ourselves. They're about ourselves and the world around us. We don't play characters, so it's also called non-illusory theater. And these 30 plays, they're very short and they're very varied. Like some are funny, some are more abstract, or some are political. Some are serious, some are just weird. And the audience decides what order we perform these 30 plays in. So we have a timer on the wall, and we have a clothesline that goes across the stage. And on the clothesline are 30 pieces of paper that are numbered. And each piece of paper also has a title of a play. So if the audience says 16, we'll pull down the sheet of paper that says 16 and we'll read that title. And that title is of a play that we've written and rehearsed. And we go and set up how the stage needs to be, or how anywhere, because the plays can be anywhere, or how maybe we go stand on some chairs in the audience, stuff like that. And then we call the play, and then we say go, and then we perform the play. And another structural component of the show is the word curtain, and that's the audience members' cue to scream out the number of the play they want to see next. So they determine how the show goes. And sometimes we finish all 30, and sometimes we do like 27 and a half. But we stop as soon as the timer goes off.
I think the most I've seen a 30. I've been at a pizza show, which I don't know if that's still a ritual, because I haven't been in quite a while because of COVID. But yeah, used to buy pizza for the whole audience if the theater sold out. And I have seen a 30 show, which felt like a miracle because it was within seconds. And what I love is because there's no heightened theatricality to it, there is a clock that is visible the whole time you are watching the show. The audience is aware of how close the performers are to pulling it off. And I remember we were just watching it, and I loved that. I don't remember who it was, but whoever was doing the 30th one was not indulging. They weren't talking faster. They weren't buying into it. They just were doing the play that they had written. And somehow it still worked out, and that felt like a miracle. But,
yeah, it's really satisfying when it happens that way.
Do you feel sometimes, because I've been at productions, I've seen it in a couple of cities on tour, and I've seen it a bunch of times at the Crane. Do you feel like, do you feel frustrated at shows where the audience gets so excited about the participation that they are, I don't want to say stepping on, but that they are obviously anticipating the word curtain from the previous show? If you've written something really personal and meaningful, does it ever hurt that it's sometimes people are just trying to get to the next thing, or does it all feel like part of the experience?
It's part of the experience, and if that's how they are responding in the moment, that means that play wasn't for them, but it was for someone else in the audience.
Our next guest has commented on this interview, so I'm going to put I'm not sure exactly what he means. Chris Heady says, the chair scene still haunts me from Too Much Light Makes the Baby Go Blind.
I don't know. There's so many plays with chairs. I don't know.
When he comes on, we're gonna retroactively ask him what this means when he comes on in a couple of minutes. I also want to say that I'm so glad that Chris Heady is already watching, but I don't see him in the green room. So if Chris Heady is having technological difficulties, I want him to email me. But I'm glad that he's watching the show. That's all I have to say about that. To that, Chris Bass says, I love technology. Okay, this is... Kyra, Chris Bass, who I'm pointing at, is one of the hardest working people in the Savannah theater community, as far as desperately trying to help us work together and connect us and make these opportunities. He was an AV guy before this, and I sometimes feel like he had a leg up on the rest of us. So I'm so grateful that he likes technology, because he has helped us all figure it out. So thank you, Chris. That was my thank you.
That phrase always makes me think of Napoleon Dynamite.
Which one?
I love technology.
I love
every time. It's been 20 years.
Well, I was gonna say, God, it has been a hot second since
not quite almost 20 years since I'm became.
Now where you said that you had your audio all set up for the horn. What part of your life does that now fill? How often do you find yourself playing for passion's sake versus sort of work sake? Where are you at with your instrument now?
I was very lucky in that I never really stopped getting stuff. It wasn't always paid stuff. Especially at the beginning of quarantine, it was mostly lots of people just putting up online stuff. There was this great horn ensemble project that I did like 5 or 6 videos for, and then as we got into the summer, Charlie Rosen, who's a music director in the scene up here, he started doing a bunch of Animal Crossing videos for his group, 8 Big Band, which is great because I love video game music and Animal Crossing. So he wrote some French horn parts for me. I think I did three of those. So that was over the summer. And those he did pay. which was great. And then
I love it when a gig is a Venn diagram of things that you already love. And especially when they're like that disparate, it's like this satisfies my love of music and my love of Animal Crossing.
Yeah,
If you can get paid for a gig like that, that's like the highest thing for me.
it was so much fun, and they were great
Yeah.
parts. He really kind of knows how the horn works. Well, he has one that he noodles on too, so he knows kind of what it can do. But yeah, he writes great horn parts. Then as people sort of started to figure out what recording sessions mean in the time of COVID, I've done three or four, I think definitely three, maybe four in-person recording sessions where we had to get tested and, social distance or masks if we weren't playing, and it was, all very safe. So I've done a handful of those, and I've done 2 live stream performances, same thing, tested, masked, not playing, spread apart on stage performances. So it's been, it's definitely income wise, it's still like a fraction of what I was doing before work wise, but the actual amount of work has been enough where I'm still playing pretty regularly.
That's great. This is an esoteric question, and it may not have a clean answer, but do you feel like you use the same sort of brain power to do both musical performances and acting performances, or do you actively feel different parts of your brain being used? I know that's a crazy question, and I have an answer too, but I'm very curious to hear what you say.
That's a very good question. I for me, the French horn is definitely more of a mechanical endeavor, because everything sort of has to be just so
right
for it to work. Excuse me, I'm kind of belch. And for performance, I feel like I can be more free, and but I do link the two. I think my French horn playing has improved from, especially being an experimental theater artist, I think has really improved my French horn playing, because when you're doing experimental theater, like things go wrong and you roll with it, and so you fail a lot in experimental theater, and that kind of made me more okay with failing in general. And French horn is like, well, there's a lot of failing in French horn, and so I have become more okay with that. And when you're not afraid of failing, you play better. You do. It's, if you're not afraid of cracking a note, you probably won't crack it, because you're not thinking about it. You're just playing. So it's.
And to those watching that may not have a ton of musical experience, I think it's fair to say that you do have that wild card that a lot of other instrument families don't have, that there's that perfect amount of breath, as well as the way that it is approached, which is very different than piano or violin or any number of other instruments, that there is that magic. I remember when I was growing up, there was a community theater that I worked with, and one of their trumpeters, it was sometimes those notes would just bend at the top, and it's the trumpet, that when a trumpet does it. And I remember being really young and thinking, like, why does that happen? Because I was playing piano, and it didn't make sense to me, that sort of idea that the pitch can be on a oscillating spectrum. Because I learned music as this, like, it's either a C or a D or a C sharp, and there's nothing in between. And to hear him like cut these pitches, it just was a bizarre thing. Did you have a moment when you were a younger horn player where it felt like that was going to be the end, that was never going to be something you could surpass, the breath control, or was it always something that sort of felt in for you?
No, I mean, French horn is one of the hardest instruments. It's like, and the learning curve is so steep. Like, I still, I definitely am still learning. Like, it's like the thing I've been playing French horn for 23 years now, and it's still every day a new, like, you find new discoveries or weaknesses you didn't know you had that you need to work on. It's a constant journey. But yeah, it's a very steep learning curve, because I'm trying to think how to describe this in a simple way. The best analogy I've seen is if you picture a piano keyboard, the lower notes are on the left and the higher notes are on the right, right? So with a French horn, it would be like if the piano keys on the left were like really wide, like 2 feet wide, and you could just, and that's easy.
Right.
Then the notes on the right, the higher notes are like quarter of an inch, and you have to, because brass instruments sit on this thing called the harmonic series, which is the overtone series. Like if you go into a cave and you go hello, and you kind of, if you listen very carefully, you can kind of hear as your voice echoes sort of some higher pitches. That's the harmonic series. So the French horn, the lower notes are farther apart, and then the higher notes are closer together. So that's why it's harder to play high, because it's just so you have to know exactly where notes are, or you will play a different one.
And that is actually, for people watching, that is the clearest, as someone who has dabbled in horns, that is the clearest explanation of what is happening, is the piano explanation of it. So thank you for turning this into an educational broadcast.
I don't know who drew that picture, but once I saw it, I was like, oh my God, people will understand now.
It certainly makes sense. I'm glad that I now know that, because for some reason I hadn't figured that out. But I love what you're talking about the I used to, one of the things I did first with the piano was I would improvise on radio show type formats with my friend Stephen Sear in Savannah, and I would do stuff that was jaunty, and I could throw in whatever I wanted. And I remember when I started doing studio work, I had to really change my mindset, because I would play a note wrong and everyone would get furious at me. And of course, in my brain, I'm like, oh, I was just bluesing it up, or I was playing just a little bit of something different, and learning the technical proficiency of an instrument that I had learned as an improvisational instrument was an interesting tonal shift for me. And I still get a little bit frightened going into a studio session in a way that I never do going in to play for myself or play jazz with my friends. So yeah, I remember I had wanted to have you on this show for a while, because I love the way that you use your social media. I obviously have always had a fascination with and a love for the neo-futurist, but knowing that you are such a proficient and extraordinary musician as well is something that I've always just been blown away by. That was a compliment, not a question. So we're going to go to the next question.
Thank you.
Which is, I want to talk about what you've got coming up, both with the neo-futurist and also what you've got coming up in your own sort of personal world in the next little bit here.
Absolutely. So the neo-futurist, we just had our last, we've been doing online performances during quarantine called Cyber Wrench. They are the last Saturday of every month. So we just had our last one at the end of November. Our next one's going to be the day after Christmas, December 26th. So you can sit with your new gifts and watch some cool experimental theater. It's been really fun. It's in a similar format of the Infinite Wrench, nay, too much light. In that, except instead of 30 plays, we're doing 15 or 16, because that's been working better with
Got it.
A cyber format. But it's still randomized. The audience types the numbers in the chat, and we have some that are perform live, and some that are pre-recorded, which has been a fun new toy to play with. For example, in this last show, I pre-recorded a play where I filmed it and then played it backwards. So I could do some neat tricks.
I love it.
Yeah, that was really fun. So next one's December 26th. And then last Saturday of the month thereafter, we have a special one for the end of February that will be a cyber version of our specialty show called The Blackest Wrench, which will include neo-futurists, active and alum, who are BIPOC. It's so much fun. We've been doing it. We've done it 3 times so far. So this will be our 4th one. So look out for that in February. Personally, one of my big personal projects during quarantine has been I started writing an essay series about the history of New York. It's called Making Tracks, because I go for a walk in a certain area of the city and I listen to an album from top to bottom while I walk. So while I walk, I observe the things around me and I write down lyrics in the songs that pop out as I'm listening to it. And then I go home with all of those notes and those lyrics and I look up the history of that area and I kind of turn it into a whole sort of guided walk with history stories. And
I love that.
It's really fun. I've written 10 so far, 7 of that general format, and then a few little bonus essays for my Patreon followers.
So to that end, shall I put a scroll up as we spend our last kind of few minutes together? Should I put a scroll up of your Patreon, and where is it? How can people find you on there?
Oh, sure. Yeah, if you just want to check out the essays, you can go to medium.com. You can either search for Kyra Michelle. You can type that into the search, or you can type in medium.com/@Kyra-Michelle. It's a little, I don't know why they have an at in there. Or you can go to my Patreon. I also have links to the essays there. It's patreon.com/Kyra Sims.
Great. And do they need to, I'm going to put it up and you tell me if it's right. Is that right?
That is correct.
Good. Now let's see if I can have your name and that scrolling at the same time, because that's going to be the kind of technology that Chris passed. Nope, that didn't work. I'm going to get it right. I'm going to get this right because I want it to scroll so people can feel that call to action that they should go.
I feel like I'm news now.
You have always been news. We're just catching up to you. So I guess my last question then is, before people go, I want them to know what to expect. What is the monthly relationship that they set up there to see or to hear or to have access to all this work that you've been doing? What are your tiers?
You can just follow. I always link the essays for free. Like, they're free if you just follow me on Medium. Or if you want to support them and get the bonus content, everyone who contributes at least $4 gets the bonus essays. The last essay I wrote is about the history of dogs in New York City, which was so much fun to research. And there's a lot of dog photos that I've taken in my 11 years in New York, and also going back to before the colonialists came, talking about dogs with the Lenape tribes. Like, it was so much fun to write, and that was just for my Patreon subscribers. So if you want, just kick in $4, you can read that.
I'm not going to do it until we're done with the show, because it will look rude if I'm over here typing. But I am going at 6:05 p.m. and I'm going to become a subscriber because I'm excited about this.
Nice.
So Kyra, we are out of time because I cut the third guest off of the show, and I'm still going over time because I get so excited and I talk to people that are really interesting. So I want to say thank you for being here with us. And I'm sure that our Savannah audience is wishing you the most wonderful holidays. I hope that some of them go and visit your various pages and get to know you a little better and come down to Savannah when you are able.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Savannah's been on my list for forever. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for having me. And I think that's a good problem to have, that you're so passionate about what you're talking about. So I feel like
excellent. So great to talk to you. Have a great holiday, Kyra.
You too. Thanks so much.
Of course. Oh, that was really cool. I'm so excited that my first interview with the new laptop was someone as awesome as Kyra. Again, I'm just going to put it back one more time. Patreon.com/Kyra Sims. So much cool work happening. I say this to all of our guests that love Savannah, but we will try to figure out how to get you down there as soon as possible, because the city is beautiful and has the most wonderful people in it. I usually show an ad at this point, but I want to spend as much time as possible with our next guest. So I'm waiting to make sure that he nods that he's being brought into the mix. I don't want to surprise him. Okay, good. I was going to show a clip of him before he came in, but I realized that I want the context. I want the building up of what this clip is. So we're just going to say his name. He's going to come into the mix. Please welcome to the show, Chris Heady, everybody.
Oh, hey!
Hey!
Hi! Hello, beautiful man. Hello. Hi.
Hello to you, my beautiful friend. How are you?
I'm very good. Happy Friday. We made
It is
it.
a Friday.
We made it. Oh, my goodness.
Well, there's a method to the madness of having this show be Fridays at 5. It was, because, Savannah Rep has always, I've tried to keep my sort of 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. model that I try not to do too much before, and I try not to do too much after. So my brain, I was like, let me do something to close out every work week that I am looking forward to, instead of hitting the high water mark on a Monday. So
I love that. And I mean, you have some fantastic guests on here. I feel like you need to have Kyra's Patreon just scrolling underneath during.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Just have that going on throughout the entirety of this. I just feel like that's worth celebrating.
Good. It is there. Wait.
Absolutely.
Kyra says thank you in the private chat. Just
yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely.
Chris, I'm going to say something that might stun you, and you're probably going to wish I hadn't said it. Are you ready?
Okay.
We first played Brothers together on stage.
We did. I'm not mad. Wait,
No,
What was surprising about it? Oh no, that's not it.
It's that we did that about 15 years ago.
Oh,
15 years ago, Chris Heady.
Wow.
We've both grown similar facial hairs since then, but otherwise the anti-aging seems to be going fairly well, which I'm very grateful for both of us for. Although it is very strange when I get on a Zoom call with someone and say that I'm an executive artistic director and they ask if I can drink yet. Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, so I have a lot of questions for you. I have a lot of things I want to talk about. The first thing I want to talk about is Hot Dog Man. I am obsessed. You are one of the people that I know in my world, in my life, that makes the sun shine wherever you go.
Thank you.
The weather improves when you enter a room, which is strange because when you enter a room, theoretically there is less weather.
That's but there are those people, right? There's those people that you come into contact with, and I love having those people around me. You know, I love getting to. There are certain people that just emulate love and joy and kindness, and I think the more that you can have those people around in your circle, I think it's really good. I think it helps really kind of you go further. I think it makes things so much clearer, and that more all the obstacles that all the less they don't seem that hard. You know, they just go by the wayside. So
I'm going to hit a couple of things before we get to Hot Dog Man. So you're an accomplished filmmaker. You have a film called Custer Wolf that has done extraordinary work. You're an accomplished puppeteer who I think people would be fascinated to. We'll talk about in a little bit your work with Hershey, because I think you did some extraordinary stuff with them. Oh. So you've had this varied, extraordinary career. How did you get to Hot Dog Man? I know that you love education, and I know that you love puppetry, and I know that you love looking silly.
I do.
And this seemed to be a combination of all those things. So tell me how Hot Dog Man came about.
It's wonderful. So, I mean, I love performing. I mean, you know that. Through Savannah Actors Theater, really launched my ability. I always, beforehand, I got to play, some silly roles in high school plays, mostly adults, mostly grown-ups when I was like an 18-year-old kid. Right. And so that always was kind of just like a little bit of a stretch. And so Savannah Actors Theater was like, well, instead of thinking about these these ages that you're not right now, what about playing a protagonist that at the age that you are right now? What if you were put into this situation right now? And I had never really gotten to see myself in that perspective before. So that was just very empowering to be able to be like, oh, what can I utilize? And with a show like Crazy Face, you got to use your entire body, right? It was all clown and performing and acting. And I have been just grateful for the opportunities to both balance between puppetry and acting. I feel like they're very similar. They're very connected in the performance aspect. You're utilizing different parts of your body, of course, to be able to express and to channel emotions into them. And Hot Dog Man came about because, well, right now I work for Carroll County Public Library, and I work in the outreach department, which is very special. We get to go around the community and we perform a lot of story times for kids and things like that. We're reading books, and we're also performing with puppets as well. And that's how I got involved with them, is because
we're just talking about Venn diagrams with Kyra. That's like the Venn diagram of a job that is suitable for you. Yes. Those are all things that you love.
And they're also very open to new creative ideas, which is fantastic. So it's like, hey, do you want to put on a show today? Absolutely. Do you want to write a new script? Do you want to record? Do you want to 3D print this object? Do you want to laser cut? It's all yeses. It's all in the benefit of higher education and letting people know about these incredible resources. So Hot Dog Man came about last year, when on November 1st, we were doing a story time, and I was driving around, and I needed a costume because my book still reflected Halloween. And I was like, okay. And so Jessica, my fiance, she had two costumes. She was like, you can be a taco or you can be a hot dog. And so I dressed up as a hot dog for the day. And I walked around a school, and all the kids, as I'm walking in a full body hot dog costume, all the kids are like, why are you dressed up like a hot dog? Don't you know that you're making me hungry? What are you doing here? Oh man. And so trying to do a story time with these kids. They had
Right.
so many questions just about a man being dressed up as a hot dog on November 1st that I was like, okay, this is clearly something. There is something to this idea.
You hit a vein, yes.
So I hit a vein,
Yes.
and then quarantine happened and COVID
Right.
happened, and I was like, how can I talk about this experience that we're all collectively going through, but in a comedic way that appeals to my sensibilities? And I was like, what if Mr. Chris ate too many hot dogs one night and he woke up as a hot dog man, and now he can't go outside because if he goes outside and interacts with people, they're going to eat him. And so he has to figure out, how is he going to live indoors? How can he get the things? And thankfully, each week or each month, a new problem persists, and the library is the solution. So I've been trying to find ways where library resources get woven into the story arc. And so it promotes the library. It allows me to be very comedic and fun. People get to see my face, and that's just really enjoyable, and a lot of joy.
Now we have a clip.
Yeah.
Can you set it up for us before we roll it?
Sure. So
this is a real interview show.
Yes.
So we do things like setting up clips and stuff.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So in this clip, Hot Dog Man has watched everything that is on the streaming end. So he has gone to the library and he's gotten a hold of a maker kit, which involves a green screen. So he's about to show kids all the different things that you can do with a green screen.
Okay, this is a green screen. With a green screen, you can go anywhere. You can go surfing. You can go underwater. You can go to outer space. You can go back in time to meet a dinosaur. You can even forecast the weather. It's gonna be a nice day. You can literally do anything and go any place. This is gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
One of my favorite. You are one of my favorite people. Let's just be honest.
Oh, you're one of mine. Thank you.
So I want to talk really quickly about the fact that I want to tell a quick story.
Yeah.
You made a film a bunch of years ago that I was in, and I'm not going to show it. But I'll tell people that it's out there. We did a recreation of the last scene of The Mist by Stephen King.
Yeah.
And I just want to point out, it was one of the last things that I did in Savannah, and it is ridiculous and silly and fun. I am playing the grandmother, and
Spectacularly, so good, so well.
Thank you very much. But I realized,
Yeah.
the moment that I realized that the art that you make is both effective and entertaining is when I started going back to watch that, not to laugh, but because when I missed Savannah, I looked at the people that you had put together. It was Justin P. Kent in the driver's seat.
Yes.
It was our dear departed Mr. Dad in the back seat with
Yeah.
me. We had Darwin Hole was in the trunk playing a child, and I realized that you had struck gold with this with finding the right people to make something just absolutely astonishingly ridiculous and fun. So I watched that film a lot. I'm not going to show it here because I'm worried about rights from the King estate. So because they're very intense.
Yeah.
But I do want to say that you have been central in 3 of the times that I have laughed almost harder than any other time in my life. And those times are, I can tell you what, it's the time that we saw the scary chairs at Walt Disney World.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Which we'll talk about in a second. It was the Christmas puppet show that we did for Puppet People, where it was Ollie discovering the true meaning of Christmas. But I want to talk for a second that you and I were somehow given permission to create a Johnny Mercer puppet show.
Oh, so good. It's so good. I feel this exact same way. I go back to these things, and especially Johnny Mercer.
Oh, yeah.
And I listen to that often, and I'm like, one, I can't believe we were paid to allow and been allowed to do that too. I can't believe how much fun it is and how interwoven the fun is with the learning, and how kids who had no idea who Johnny Mercer is. I mean, even myself, I had no idea who Johnny Mercer was. And now I cannot stop learning about Johnny Mercer because of that show. So
it was kind of, we performed it for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of school kids.
Yes.
And the long and the short of it, for people watching that aren't familiar with the show, we were given, you and I were given this mission to create a Johnny Mercer puppet show, and then given no boundaries, which was a ridiculous idea. So the long and the short is we created the character of Super Mercer, which was the Johnny Mercer puppet wearing a cape. And his catchphrase, I believe, was people would say, "Aren't you Johnny Mercer?" And he would say, "I can't be Johnny Mercer. Johnny Mercer
doesn't wear a cape. Doesn't wear a cape." Yeah.
And I would watch kids. I would watch kids go through these stages of confusion into these stages of like absolute joy.
Yes. Yes.
Because this person that had lived 100, 50s to 100 years ago, that was not in their approachable understanding of history, was suddenly a superhero, and that has always made me so happy. So
I don't know how many people come away from these things and still remember them, but I'm struck by the people who do. And when through the grapevine someone tells me that someone that they met on the streets because they were somehow connected with a film that we did or a play or something like that, and they recognize them, and they're like, "You're that person from that stage play or that movie. You were amazing." It really, that's so good. And I think it speaks to the heart of everything that I really try to do, is both try to find the truth of like what we're trying to discuss in our short time together, and also trying to collaborate with as many people as possible. And I think that's one of the joys about the more and more that I do these online videos, is like, ooh, even in our digital world like this, you can still collaborate with people, and you can still provide opportunities to meet up or do something remote. And I gotta say, it makes it all the sweeter. It makes it, when watching it again and knowing that we focused on creating something good and creative in a time where it's dark and abysmal and all of these feelings are happening. It's just, that's what I latch onto. It's just like, oh my gosh, this was so much fun to make. And you can see that in the final product. You can feel that joy. And I hope that's what I always bring to my projects.
Well, you're dovetailing into a very specific memory I have of you, which is when we sat down to write the Mercer show. I think we had both had a lot of caffeine, and we were both feeling pretty silly. But I remember you saying something to the tune of, "We might as let's make him a superhero, and let's swing big, because we're only going to have so much time with these kids." And it radically reshaped, as someone who had been teaching at that point for 5 years. It radically reshaped my concept of how I approached teaching children, because I had very quickly gotten into that sort of dangerous place as a teacher, where I was like, I have an hour. How am I going to fill an hour? I'm going to have to do this. And you came in and said, we have so little time with them. Let's make it all count. And I realized you can view an hour as either something you have to fill, or something that you get to pour out for these kids.
Absolutely.
So thank you for that gift. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I feel like we were given a level of freedom, and getting to work with you was like not only a masterclass in just like in professionalism and showing up, but also improvising by the seat of your pants as well. And I really enjoyed that. And that level of just like, you can put something together, and if you're thoughtful with your intent, it can come out good. That's traveled with me ever since, because there's like a couple of scenes within that episode where Jessica, who's been my filmmaker, is like, "Okay, you're gonna make a movie now. What's it gonna be?" And I'm like, I have no idea. I'm gonna just take these pieces and I'm just gonna make what seems sense. And then in the editing room, the story comes together, and it's like, that didn't exist before, and now all of a sudden there's a narrative in place. You shouldn't always do that, but it's nice to know that sometimes if you practice enough of storytelling and your craft, you can essentially walk in, and the joy of like that improvisation is it's the closest thing that we have to being on a live stage right now. Mm-hmm. It is that kind of like that element of, I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth in a second, but here we go. And so I think that's, I miss live theater, but I think that this is, yeah. And I miss you too, but
well, I miss you. I miss you. Yeah. I have, Rep has announced a digital season, which, and I had just had this really great shout out to Jim Marikas, who has moved from Connect Savannah since you were in Savannah. They've started a new piece called the Savannian, or it's a new digital only at this time paper. Yeah. And had the most wonderful interview with him, sort of bridging the gap of what we love about being on stage, the realities of not being able to,
yes.
And I'm going to show you what Chris Bass just said, because I think it's funny. Improvising by the seat of your pants, I need pants. But it reminded me that outside of all of, I don't know any actor. I don't know any actor who is grateful for this time off, if that makes sense. I don't know any actor who is thinking, oh, I really... I know actors that have taken this time to grow, and I know actors that have taken this time to regroup, but no one is happy to not be on stage. And talking to Jim and sort of realizing that a lot of non-theater practitioners think that we might be finding this to be easier or more satisfying, or that being able to sit at home and wear our sweatpants is made. And I will give anything to go back to a dressing room, put on a costume, get my 5-minute call, and go out.
Oh yeah, and then the kinetic energy of two people just reacting to what each person is saying on stage. I mean, there's nothing like that. You can throw on a bunch of effects over top of but in the end, you're still seeing the shows that I've seen typically have. You're very conscious and aware of like where that person's coming from.
Yeah.
So, that's one of the reasons why with my other show, the Captain Corky show, I really wanted to focus in on like green screen and using imagination and really transporting the audience to somewhere that they couldn't go, and taking, but boy, you're relying upon, in this time, you're relying upon who's around you and what technology you have. And I think that we're all really forgiving in this time, and I think that I think it's important that the work continues. And I think it's important that, even if you're not on stage, you still need to keep these muscles growing. You still need to do things because if you don't, then you lose it. It's just like, it's like the Olympic ice skater that has to take a year off because they injured themselves or something like that. Only this is just like something bigger than that. So it'll be interesting to see how this affects people long term. But I think in the meantime, I think people underestimate the amount that they can do from home, and the amount that if they just turn their mind a little bit, they can really focus in on doing something positive and something creative.
Which I think is so true, because I think there are social muscles as well as artistic ones. And I think muscles like compassion and empathy are getting, you're either working them right now or you're letting them lapse. And I'm watching people choose different directions for them. I think there's going to be that recovery period of us coming back as artists, but there's also going to be that recovery period of everyone having the social contract again, because everyone is so, people that I know that are some of the most empathetic people in the world are pushed to their very limits right now.
Yes.
And that's a hard gift to give over digital, but the ways in which it can be done are very effective. I want to say that Grace is saying hi to us. That's someone that I like very much. Hi.
I like her very much too.
I want to shout out, because we've talked about them at length, Angela Beasley's Puppet People.
Yes.
Who not only gave us some of our amazing opportunities in Savannah, but have been touching the lives of Savannahans for 35 years.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
At least.
So I want to talk. I'm going to lose you in just a minute because I promised I would bring this show in under an hour, and I'm going to try to do it. But I want to talk about you. You went to Hershey.
Yes.
And with all of this experience of this type of puppetry,
Yeah.
and they gave you controls and a screen, and you were doing a digital character before it was even cool this year. So tell folks what that job was like, and also tell people about how I got to see you in New York, because I always thought that was a really cool thing.
Oh my gosh. Okay,
Yeah.
so for 6.5 years, I was the voice of the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. And that was an incredible experience, because up until that point, the Hershey product characters had never had voices. They were just mascots that walked around and things of that nature. And so they partnered up with the Jim Henson Creature Shop, and they invested in the Henson Digital Performance System, which is more or less a large screen that's in front of you and a series of computer consoles down below. But then there is equipment on either side of you. You have a joystick like you're flying a fighter jet, and then you also have what is essentially like what looks like a death cage, and you stick your hand inside of it, but there's potentiometers all around that are measuring where your hand is in time and space. So based upon if I move my hand up or down, the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup head is moving up and down. And then there's also foot pedals down below as well. So you're pressing the foot pedals, and those are controlling the arms, which are just suddenly moving around. And you're programming all of these things. It already has some things built in, which wonderful programmers at the Jim Henson Company put in ahead of time to be like, you might like this, but you don't have to have this. And then the joystick here controls the spinal column. And there's also little triggers for your fingers to manipulate. So that controls the blinks and like the eyes or other things. You also have what's equivalent of like a shift key. And so you know how you have like lowercase and uppercase letters, you have lowercase expressions and uppercase. So you can program in a completely separate expression. So all of this is to say, I'm running out of time here, is that for 6.5 years,
we're not going to bring it in under an hour. Just tell the story.
So for 6.5 years, I performed in essentially a movie theater. So they had a movie theater set up very similar to Monsters Laugh Floor, similar to they also had this at the aquarium. Crush, Turtle Time with Crush.
Yes.
Also, the Georgia Aquarium also has a digital puppet by the Jim Henson Company as well. And this digital puppet would interact with the audience live in real time. We would have a banter back and forth, and they would get to choose the direction of the story narrative based upon activities participation. So they would say, yay, boo, and then that would I would, with a foot pedal, trigger different endings or situations. It all was pretty much the same story each time, but the audience members, what they brought to it, they really participated. They really enjoyed interacting with this character, and it was really pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't see me, so it was a lot of. We also had the ability to project that stream into
see if I can find that picture while we were talking about it.
Into the front lobby of Chocolate World. And so we would have kids all the time, like you would get a barometer of different expressions. Some of them would just be like, and then other kids were just like fascinated, and then they wanted to bow down to you, and it was just, I've never been in charge, getting to when you're that control of a character and they are so nondescript, you get to define them, right? You get to kind of flesh them out. There was basic plot beats of this is what they could be. But it was just really great to embody that narcissistic, egocentric character that was just a terrible, terrible person, but he was all about himself and the brand, and making sure even if a kid was allergic to him, he was like, that's okay, that just means you're not going to take me into an alleyway and try to take a bite out of my head. We're perfect friends. We can be friends. There's no reason why we can't be. That doesn't mean you're not allergic to plushes. You know, that kind of embodiment of just like, I can still take your money. It's totally fine. The kids who encountered our characters in the movie theater felt such a connection to us that they would go out and buy the merchandise right away. Even if it was the Hershey Kiss, who was a female character, if she met with a young boy and had a bond with him, that young boy would go out and buy the plush of the Kiss because it didn't matter. It was about this. And that was just so cool from a puppeteer's perspective to have that level of control and to be so integral to the voice of a brand. Right. And then we saw each other because that very signal that can be broadcast downstairs into the lobby can also be broadcast to New York City. So for a short period of time, we were having these broadcast sessions where we would be, for like 15, 30 minutes at a time, we would be sending our signal of the character to New York City. And we had like a little webcam set up in the Chocolate World store up there. And Ryan McCurdy walked in one day and he got to see it live. So that's just so cool that you got to see that in the time that I was there. It just amazing. I'm
glad too. I remember getting the message and you were like, come to Chocolate World and you'll see me. And I was so excited because I was like, you're going to be there. He's like, kind of. So I show up and I see this gigantic figure on a gigantic television charming a child. And I instantly knew, I'm like, it's Chris.
Yeah.
And I love that you were sitting at the studio in Hershey, Pennsylvania doing that. And
me too.
And changing a kid's life.
And when you think about it now, like that's what we're doing now. We're doing all of these Zoom story times and you're wiggling your fingers. Oh, you got plans. Okay. Yeah.
Well, no, I was just saying that inadvertently brought full circle what I was thinking of that. Yeah. So
my gosh. Yeah. Full circle.
It's that idea, it's so strange that was only what, 4, maybe 5 years ago at the most.
Yeah.
And at that point, the concept still felt untapped. The idea of sending the signal to another city to have a digital character interact with a live person in New York, or a live person interact with a live person in New York, it was still untapped. And at the end of this year, which we all feel, to be honest, some version of tapped out, it's so great to look back and realize that there was a moment when it was full of this spontaneity and life. And I think if you reach down deep, we can all find that again if we're patient. Kyra wants to know, Kyra, are you still in the mix? Can I bring you back in to ask the question, or are you gone? I don't know, because we're passing out. Can I bring you back in? Please welcome Kyra back to the stream. Hi.
Hey.
Hi.
I just remembered your comment.
Yes. Okay. So my fiance Jessica, she got to do Too Much Light Makes the Baby Go Blind, and there was a scene they did the whole thing where they picked up, and the kids did it in high school, and they picked one involving a baby chair, and there was like a mama chair and a dad chair, and then they got on top of each other and they produced a baby chair. Does this sound familiar?
I mean, it was a high school performing like pre-written plays?
It was, I mean, they went through the book and they selected scenes from Too Much Light Makes the Baby Go Blind.
So in
the ones that were appropriate for them to do. And so this was one of them. And the chair, like, they're just doing like 1, 2, 3. And so the father chair dies, and then the mother chair turns around and is like pregnant with this baby chair, and then the baby chair is like left alone, and the mother chair dies, and then it's left like alone. And it was just like this moment where I was like, what is like, the whole audience was just like gasping over a chair. It was the most like, so anyway, your involvement with this group is bravo. You need to put the Patreon thing down there again.
I'm going to put it back up. Kyra, can I ask you one more question since you came back and while Chris is here?
Sure.
Well, this is a question I meant to ask in our first half hour, and now that I've decided we're not making it an hour show, even if I try. So my question, this is my last question, which is there a piece, hearing Chris describe one that obviously has resonated for many years, and mine Mine was the first time I saw them at Dad's Garage. They were on tour. Interestingly, Dad's Garage, founded by a guest of this show, or co-founded by Sean Daniels, who was on this show just a couple weeks ago. There were two. It was like 17 and 21. And they were literal music videos, number 1 and number 2. And the first one was the actor came out and they played Turn Around, and the actor turned around, and that was the whole thing. And then the next one was the same actor came out and they played Don't Turn Around, and he didn't. And then they said curtain. I will never, as long as I live, forget those two plays. Now that we've both told you one, is there one that you have written that just lives in that liminal space for you of like, you will never forget it as long as you live?
Well, I wrote a play once where I ate yogurt out of someone else's mouth.
Wait,
so
you have the spoon? Are you like
The spoon.
What year was that? I feel like
2016.
I saw that one.
You might have.
Yeah, it was you were the only one that performed it, right? It didn't go into rep when you.
No, because it was about me. It was
right.
It was something that I wrote about. It had a long title. It was something like a reenactment of the time I realized I was emotionally homeless and 30 years old, and that being able to eat a yogurt while wearing a light winter coat was the only like solid thing I had going for me. It was something. It was a really long title, and then all it was this guy was sitting in a chair and someone poured yogurt into his mouth, and then I ate the yogurt, and another guy was wrapped around me like a coat. And that was, it was very fun, and
that's incredible.
People lost their minds every time.
Yeah, rightfully so. That's amazing.
All right, so now that we're at 1 hour and 6, I'm going to say goodbye first to Kyra. Goodbye, Kyra. Thank you for coming back and having a second appearance.
Oh, sure.
And now it's time, Chris. It's time to say goodbye to you.
Well, it's been really good. It's been really nice to see you again.
It's been lovely to see you. I'm going to put your name up one more time. This is the time of year where we were doing our Christmas show for Angela Bee's Public People. The highlight of that tour was you know what I'm talking about the choir, the sarcastic choir that got upstage. Do you remember that?
No.
Oh, okay.
I just remember Baby from Punch and Judy saying something about Jesus, and
well, we were trying to educate the audience about Jesus' connection to the season, but neither of us knew a lot about Jesus, or I didn't at least. So we just got to the point where the character kept saying Jesus.
Yeah. So anyway, go ahead. What was
this? So we did this. I think it was in Pooler, and there was a choir that was supposed to go on after us, and the choir leader was very obstinate. Like, I don't know why there has to be a puppet show, but you're gonna have to stay under your 30 minutes because we have to sing our jingle bells, and they've all come down here from their homes to sing the jingle bells. So we finished, and I think we introduced them, and they came out, and she did her introduction. They started, jingle bells, and a fire truck, which is going to spray the kids with foam to pretend that there's snow because there's no snow event. So this fire truck comes pulling into the parking lot. Every siren is going. And the woman looks at the fire truck, which you can't hear anything. And she turns back, and we could hear her because we were on the stage. She goes, "Sing louder! Sing louder!" And my favorite part is they go, jingle bells. And then they get to the end and they go, jingle bells. And then, oh, everybody's the right one who's open, say. They finish. And 2 seconds later, the fire truck turns off its sirens. And the audience isn't sure whether to applaud for the fire truck or for us. And meanwhile, we've both brought puppets back up and are lip syncing to their song. That's the story we're sending you out with. Chris Heady, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you very much, Ryan. It's been a pleasure. Take care, Savannah.
That is Chris Heady. That is Kyra Sims. That was a fun show, y'all. I hope I uploaded this video correctly to the new laptop. This is supposed to be a 90-second video to remind you that although we've raised an astonishing almost $8,000 this week alone for Savannah Rep, our budget is a lot more than that. And we have a lot of things we need to spend it on soon. So this is a reminder that we are still graciously accepting your donations now and forever. And you're going to see some amazing actors tell you why. If it doesn't play, you'll know what I said it was supposed to be. And if it does, Have a great one. We'll see you next week.
The Ghost Light, a single bulb left center stage after each performance, has traditionally served as a supernatural offering to those who came before us and those we have lost, to ensure that the theater, their theater, never goes dark.
That the magic of theater continues. Theaters from Broadway to the West End, Los Angeles to Savannah may be closed for now, but their ghost lights remain lit.
Our spirits remain hungry, our responsibilities clear. We look at this as an opportunity, a chance to build on the work we've done.
A chance to embrace our theatrical roots and create new adventures.
What we do now paves the way for the years to come, for the Savannah rep of the future.
We promise that the ghost light will burn brightly until it is safe to begin again.
It is our responsibility to carry on the traditions that precede us. We are Savannah Rep.
A home for great stories and great theater. The hands of the clock will move again, and this is not the end of the story.
It's a new beginning.
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 And we'll see you soon.